So I'm a science journalist, Alexandra Borisova, and I'm happy to talk today to Confocal.nl, and we will talk about RCM technology. And so my first question will be, how was the idea of this new technology in confocal microscopy was born? Who was at the roots of this technology, and how many years did it take to get from the idea to, let's say, at least first prototype?
Okay, so the idea, if I think backwards, it's now almost 10 years old. So 10 years ago, it started at the university in the lab of Eric Manders and a lady called Julia Di Luca. She was working on designing a confocal microscope that has a very sensitive detector. So her original idea was, okay, how can we build a confocal microscope utilizing a camera as detector? The regular detector of confocal microscope is a photomultiplier tube. But the scientific cameras used in astronomy, they are maybe 2 to 3 times more sensitive. So she started to think 10 years ago, okay, how can we use a camera as a detector? So this is 10 years ago. She became a PhD about 5 years ago, yes. And also 5 years ago, Eric Manders, her professor, and I founded together Confocal.nl. The instrument is based around 2 inventions, the scientific invention and the technology invention. The technology invention was, okay, how can we use the camera as a detector? And in the scientific invention, she started to think, okay, if we do using a camera, maybe we can improve the resolution, okay? So she started to think, okay, if I see this image and I use a laser to excite the specimen, okay, then I collect the emission light, and then normally it would go through the pinhole and then you get one measurement. But now she put on the position of the pinhole, she put a second scanning mirror set that was painting the information she was seeing on the camera. Point by point, line by line, frame by frame. And maybe you have done this at parties. You take a camera, you take a long exposure, and then you take a flash lamp or an LED and you can write something, I love you. And we use the same technology. We have the camera on long exposure, and then we write the super resolution image on the camera. So the scientific invention was, okay, if the area that I'm reading, I'm going to write larger on the camera, okay? And then I'm going to scale it back. What is happening? I always explain it very simply. You have paper size A3, A4, okay? Then you take a pen, you make a marker on both. Then with the A3, you go to the photocopy machine and reduce it to A4. What happens to the pen stripe? It becomes sharper. So the RCM works just as the photocopy machine. Optically, mechanically, we increase the resolution. We make sharper images.
Thank you. And what about yourself? As far as I know, you were back then 5 years ago on quite a top position in Nikon Instruments Europe, right?
Yeah.
How did it happen that you decided to move to this startup? That you, why did you believe in it? To join the team that is introducing the new, not yet known on the market technology?
Yeah, so I used to be a general manager for Nikon Instruments Europe, yes. I was responsible for Europe, Africa, and for the Russian market. To explain this, I have to go a little bit further back. About 10 years ago, or 11 years ago, the Dutch government, maybe you know, we have in the Netherlands, we win gas. And the Dutch government always budgets the gas pricing. But the gas pricing on the world market is related to oil pricing. So the government budget, but always we got a much bigger gain. And the difference between the budget and the gain, they always invested in the scientific community. They call it the knowledge economy. And then when the Lehman shock came, they said, okay, we can do this one more time. but from now on we need to reduce the deficit. So the last money is available. And universities teamed up in groups. And if the Dutch government makes investment in scientific, they always like that company people are involved. They like that, of course, it's a scientific idea and scientific project, but company people should be involved to look for the utilization. What can a society do with this scientific invention? So Eric Manders formed a group consortium called Nanoscopy. And I was involved as Nikon member in guiding this project. So Eric was a winner, about 6.5 million euros were won. From this money, 15 PhDs were hired. And one of these 15 was Julia De Luca. Okay. So when this project is rolling, also Dutch government wants to have company people in the user committee. So when the reporting is done by the scientists, company people should check, okay, it's going well, it's going well. And I was member of that user committee as well. And during one of the meetings, Dutch government asked me, the Science Foundation asked me, what do we need to do to commercialize this project? And they were really liking the invention of Julia. And then I made some recommendation. You have to basically take it away from the university and have non-university people involved in the commercialization. But this did not happen. And then a few years later, there was a reorganization at Nikon, and I was looking outside Nikon, and then also the Dutch government, the scientific government, said to me, why are you not starting that company yourself? So I did. It's a challenge. If you work for a big company, often nothing is possible, you know. Decisions go very, very slow. And I really wanted to have one more time in my life the opportunity to do everything I wanted. And the startup company is ideal for that. You know, everything is possible. And it's a very nice environment of creation. You can be creative and do something. So this was my main motivation to join the startup company.
Thank you. You already started to speak about this kind of triangle between government funding, university innovation, and startup activity. And as far as I know, so your background is in biology. So I guess you also have some good understanding of how academia works, right? So can you speak a bit more, both in your case about the interaction with Amsterdam University, how in general, how do they, in Netherlands, how do they motivate people from academia to participate in startup and spin-off activity, and what is the role of the university itself? Does it help to helps with patenting, logistics, having an office, you know, a site? How is this motivation to go to spin off is working, or more or less in academia in Netherlands, in your experience?
Yeah, so in Netherlands, university have the knowledge transfer centers. And in each university has a knowledge transfer center. And in the knowledge transfer centers, kind of business development people are working, that are talking to the scientists and helping them making patents. Okay, and then they also look on the other side on company that wants to use the patents. So this is the role of the business development. In our case, in Confocal.nl, the University of Amsterdam's knowledge center called ICSA was very helpful in creating the company. So they were guiding the whole process and advising us, and also how to maneuver within the university politics. Was very helpful. And then even they helped us to find the initial budget. Now, the company was based on the University of Amsterdam venture fund. So there is a venture fund at the university to stimulate the startup of companies. And you know, we were a little bit special because myself and Eric, we are not the youngest anymore. But they liked the experience. They help a lot students also as well. So there's a whole arrangement of young people that are starting up companies, and they are actively really supported by the university and the knowledge transfer. So in the venture fund was our initial money. And when we grew 3 years later, we needed more money to grow further, so to go into the scaling up phase. And then they said, okay, we as a university have the task of bringing technology into the market. The commercial role, we have to find a commercial investor. So it took me about a year to find and to talk to several parties. And finally, we found a Dutch company, investment company, called Value Creation Capital. And they took over, let's say, the helping. They brought money, but also they brought advice, hands-on advice. And now we are in a more mature position as a company. So it's a combination of academic help and commercial help. And because of that, we are now ready to go into the further scaling up phase.
That sounds not bad at all. So did they already have patents before you came in?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
That's actually a very good point. The first patents were acquired or made by the university, okay, and then owned by the university. But when the commercial party was coming in, they look at the value of the company, and the patents portfolio is a real important part of the value of the company. So the commercial investor insisted that the patents were transferred to the company. So the company has to buy out the patents from the university. And now the company is 100% owner of all patents.
Yeah, that's indeed a very interesting point. How does it work legally? So university has the right to have patents, but also has the right to sell it. So it's not blocking the business development. Am I getting it right?
Yeah, so in Dutch government, everybody at the university signs a contract, labor contract. And in the labor contract is stated that all findings are 100% owned by the university. Okay? So in this way, they can commercialize the patents, they can sell the patents. But there's another thing. For the inventors, the people that created the idea and the concept of the patent, when there is a commercialization, there's a kickback for the inventor. So when the university sells and earns money, the inventors are also earning money. So this is the spiral that keeps everybody productive at the university.
Okay, yeah. So it's kind of you're anyway you're in, so you're getting something back, because to motivate people in academia is a challenging thing. Like we know it. So we can now go back to the creation of the company itself. How did it work when you made it taking shape? How did you put together the team? Whom did you have already, or you take from the university, whom you had to find in the market? What was the core of this team?
Yeah, so the startup phase, the first year, was kind of a really funny phase because we didn't have any office. So maybe, there's a movie from Tom Hanks. He's living at an airport because he's somewhere in between flights and he's living at the airport. So I was Tom Hanks at the university. I was living at the university. So going illegally into a meeting room and have meeting there without any reservation, and people were coming. Then, okay, I'm sorry, I didn't make any reservation. Then get copies made or scans made. But then after a year, they said, Peter, you are too often here and you need to start paying. So then I decided, okay, we made a one-room company. So next to the university, there is an organization called Matrix, and this is shared facility buildings. And as a company, you can rent a room or multiple rooms in there. And for us as a company, this was a big step, because that building has a reception and there's a lady sitting there. And you can use that lady for receiving package or sending a package. Mentally, this was a really big step. So Eric and I were the co-founders. So Eric stayed at the university in the beginning. After 3-4 years, he's moved to the company. So I was by myself. In the beginning, we were having students to do work, but then we needed to hire staff. And a lady called Marie-Lise Stark-Dame, who is now our Chief Operation Officer, she was working at the university and she was observing us. And she was thinking, wow, I want to be involved in a startup company. So she approached us, and actually she started to work for us before we could hire her. So people come to us. But then we looked in the field, okay, what kind of people do we want? And you meet people. So now we have a person from India called Amit Cherian. He was the organizer of the Bangalore microscopy workshop. So a person well known in the microscopy field. And we offered him a job, and he moved to Amsterdam. So another person who is now going to do the demonstration, Jeroen, his story is that he was working at the university, and he and his boss came for a demo in our company. So we did a demo for him, and then basically I found out that he's a very good guy. And then when we had a position available, we approached him, and he was happy to join us. So you have to be always on the lookout for people. So every time I go somewhere, I'm looking for, okay, the people that I meet, how good are they? And I always try to have one or two people in my mind before a position comes available. So in this way, you can slowly, but build a strong team.
Okay, and what about like the initial scientific team? Giulia De Luca, did she remain with you in the company, or she's still in academia?
It's a good question. Yes, I always wished that she would stay in the company, but she decided that her private life should go another direction. She wanted to, I guess, get married, become mother, and then being part of a hectic startup company. You know, especially in the beginning, the startup company life is very hectic. You know, very up and down. One day is happy, and then next day you're crying. This is startup life. So you need to have some talent for that, to manage that. And if your personal direction is not matching that, you should do it.
Yeah, that's of course a very specific activity.
But I know she's still following us actively. So every step we do, she's really happy for us.
It's really nice. How was it getting the funding? You talked about the patent transfer and this the help of the university. How was the decision making? What matters? The awards that you got, did they matter? And anyway, do you have kind of a clear way that any putting it a little bit in, you know, pinkish colors, clear way that any spin-off company can go in seeking funding, or it's less obvious and it's more by your personal decision? enthusiasm and connections?
Yeah, so that's an interesting question. I have to say that the initial funding at the university was kind of easy, because it's kind of the task from the university as well to spin off companies. It's their task, so they cannot be too critical. To get the commercial investment, I spoke to 23 parties. It took me a year to find the perfect match, because you have to work with these people, so there must be some connection. So we invested really some time in that, finding the correct partners. What you're referring to in the whole process, we participated as much as possible in any opportunity to get attention. So any prize we tried to get, and we became startup company of the year. We won prizes in the medical sector. So each kind of pitch event, and I have to say that Marilise, she's very good in these pitch events, and she managed to get noticed. We won prizes. Marilise went to a trip to America, to Silicon Valley, paid by the Dutch government. So we have got numerous prizes, and I advise everybody to do and keep doing that, because every publicity is good for you. Because there's always a person that has to make a decision about you, and then they say, wow, I remember you, you won this prize.
So basically you need everything if you want to achieve at least something. But how do you convince, or how are you convincing the researchers to try this new technology in confocal microscopy instead of using the one that they know already? Was it difficult to make the first steps in the field? How did they react?
This is a very, very, very important issue, because in the beginning, when you're new, you think, I'm new, everybody needs me. But everybody thinking differently. Everybody thinking, wow, prove yourself first, then I maybe need you. So there was an investigation, and in the microscopy field, on average, it takes 2 years before people starting to accept technology. And this is in Europe, but I can imagine that in other countries it takes even longer. So continuously we have to prove ourselves why we are in the market, why we are doing what we are doing. So this is a very hard job. Actually, you have to convince your customers one by one. You know, our first customer was Professor Markus Sauer. He's a well-known person from the field in Germany. And he was our first customer because he knew the academic work, and he knew that my background, that I could commercialize it. So he was happy very early on to be our customer. And these kind of decisions really help a small company. And the other thing is that, you know, we are a little bit disruptive. You know, the microscopy field, the big companies like Nikon, Olympus, they all make big systems and they all closed. You know, and you cannot change anything as a researcher. And then we as a young company come and say, okay, we are completely open. So researchers have to get used to that new kind of situation. So we, instead of buying a completely new system for €500,000, he now can reuse his existing microscope and put our technology on that existing microscope. And then suddenly he realized, wow, if I buy the new system or upgrade my existing microscope, the upgrade situation is much better because we are open, but we can select all the components that improve the performance. So because of our scanning technology and because of our cameras detector, we have a better system than any system that you can buy new. And the customer has saved money. So this kind of situation takes time to realize, because people blindly trust the big brand. And people are not easy to say, okay, I don't need this, I'm going to do this. And then there is the other thing. It's not only the upgrade. We use a camera as detector, so we are the only confocal microscope, point scanning confocal microscope that uses a camera as detector. And it's really strange because the camera is 2 times or 3 times more sensitive, and all these researchers doing single molecule imaging, for instance, they only have very little light. So still they accept that they use a insensitive detector in their confocal microscope. So we are now working very hard by showing lifestyle imaging movies and how low phototoxicity our system has. So we are actually taking the situation to the extreme to really show that what we can do, other systems cannot do. For instance, if you look at super resolution techniques like STORM or SIM or STAT, they all use very powerful lasers, tens of milliwatts, hundreds of milliwatts, or even watts. Okay, so, and they study then biology. You know, if you go to the beach, first thing you do for your kid, you take a sunblock because the light harms the cells. And we do super resolution microscopy with lots of light. Only our system. You know, we are the only system that have low, very low laser power. So as an example, and maybe Jeroen will show it later on, we have a data set on the website that shows illumination with 85 nanowatt. Nanowatt. No other system can do nanowatt. We can do nanowatt. That's a big difference than milliwatt or hundreds of milliwatts or watt. So we can have the reduced laser light, very safe for cells, keeps them happy, and we improve the resolution to 120 nanometer. So it's a really unique system, and now people start realizing this, and they start to appreciate our technology. But it took 5 years.
5 years. If you look at it from another side, it's not really a lot, because this really it came between the strength of the beam and how biological system can survive. Like it's everywhere basically. So we can remember how the structure of ribosome by Ada Yonath was done. It was exactly, okay, I want it to be this very strong, but this probably very cold, otherwise it doesn't survive. Okay, how do I do it? But if I'm not making it strong, then I have no diffraction, because I only have carbon and hydrogen atoms, so I have no diffraction. So it's I understand the point, and it's like when you're able to make it, I guess it has to be convincing, but you have to be able to explain it. It's really nice.
So now I also have a kind of hobby role. I'm mentor. So for students that do a startup, I try to help them as a mentor. And this situation of 5 years is something I try to explain them. Do not give up. Do not give up. Continue. Keep it going.
Yeah, that should be a good advice, but maybe not so easy to follow. So easier to pronounce than to follow. So, do you think that RCM in the future can really replace classical non-focal microscopy? And what are the plans for the company? As far as I understand, so now you're focused on the upgrade of the existing machinery. Do you want to start to produce your own machinery as maybe as soon as you're more established as brand and researchers know you, and another 5 or 10 years pass and they need to change anyway their microscope, right?
Yeah, so personally, I don't think that any single technology will dominate the market. You know, if we all will be driving the best car, we all will be driving Ferrari. No, we're not, because we have different needs. You know, it's very difficult to go shopping in a Ferrari. So yes, different applications need different systems. So I don't think there will be a single technology that will ever dominate the market. But if you look at, you know, our system is camera based. It's more sensitive, it has lower cost, it's easier to implement, and it's easier to use. So the user cannot make a mistake. The data set is, the camera bit depth is 16-bit. So somehow the data set is in that 16-bit. So if you have a little bit too much laser light or too low laser light, you're still collecting it because the bit depth is much more bigger for the camera than for the photomultiplier tube. So you can build better systems by just rethinking differently. So this is for now, and maybe I want to add something, which is, I want to talk a little bit about the infrared system. Because we started the company thinking visible and resolution improvement. And the resolution improvement became a low phototoxicity. But during this time, these 5 years, we also realized that the camera that we use is still very sensitive in the infrared, in the near infrared. So 650 to 1000 nanometer wavelengths. And I realized that the photomultiplier tube is totally not sensitive in there. So utilizing near infrared dyes in microscopy is not so widely spread because people couldn't use it. So then we started thinking, okay, there's one type of microscopy that uses infrared. This is multiphoton microscopy. So we have an infrared laser, goes inside the specimen, deep inside. Infrared light can go deeper into tissue. And then the two photons hit each other, then the line becomes visible. And they can work with traditional visible dyes or fluorochromes. So infrared, no scattering going in, but visible, no scattering going out. So then we started thinking, okay, maybe you know the mouse imaging stations. So sometimes you see a picture of a mouse and it's always laying like this, and you see a blob here. The blob is fluorescence. So these whole mouse imaging people are used to infrared light because you can go in, no scattering, and you can go out, no scattering. And they use probes like 800 nanometer probes made by Perkin-Elmo or by Licor. So in this market, using infrared dyes is really normal. So we start to think, okay, we can do maybe the same. So infrared in, infrared out, utilizing these probes. And for instance, we got a grant, we got a European grant that basically said, okay, we have a multi-photon performance for deep penetration, and you can do the single photon deep penetration. And in this grant, we put a target of imaging the tonsil. The tonsil structure is 1 millimeter, and our target was to go through. And in the end, we achieved this by selecting the best components. We could fulfill or quest of building a system that can go 1 millimeter or more into tissue, that in utilizing infrared dyes. While doing that, we started to look at the medical field. So suddenly we learned that there is a technique called intraoperative fluorescence-guided surgery. So basically, the surgeon is cutting, but the patient is stained with infrared fluorochromes to stain for the tumor. So then the surgeon has a macro imaging system. He's cutting tissue, taking weight, removing tumor. But in some cases, especially tumors from the neck region, the tumor is very, very small. So even they say in 90% of cases of operations, the surgeon is insecure about the result. So he would like to have feedback from the pathologist. So he wants to take tissue, and then the pathologist is saying, okay, surgeon, it's enough, or you have to continue. So this pathologist cannot see with his eyes infrared. So he needs an infrared imaging system, a 3D imaging system. And we feel the infrared version of our RCM can have a big market in the operations theater.
So basically the pathologist has to be sure that the surgeon took the whole tumor issue and probably a little bit like as small as possible piece of healthy issue, but that we know that from here the healthy tissue starts, right? So you want to image this?
Yeah. So if you think about, there are 600,000 operations in the neck region tumors per year in the world. And 90% the surgeon is insecure. You know, if we can even reduce that 90 to 50%, we can save many lives.
Yeah, sure. And then if he or she is insecure, then it's probably the repeated surgery. Like, of course, you want to have more precision. That's no discussion.
Yes. So you avoid.
Okay. Yeah, that's very interesting.
So to summarize, for the startup, this is nice, because when we were beginning, we didn't realize all of this. So when we start developing the product and developing the ideas, you look to other markets. Automatically, you see new opportunities. So this is a very, very important point for small companies, being open for new technology and new markets and new ideas.
Yeah, sure. So if you can summarize again, what is Confocal.nl now, and how do you see it in, say, 10 years, both site-wise, staff-wise, and market-wise? How now you talked about this possible application, how maybe you think something of your markets geographically or other applications, or how much do you want to grow?
How much we want to grow. Our ambition is big. You know, when we were the baby company, we were one person, and now we are, let's say, 10 persons full-time. We have a few persons working around the company, so we are, let's say, 12 persons right now. So in 5 years, 10 years, I surely can see that our company will be bigger. So we started as a single product company, but we want to be a multi-product company. Okay, so we want to spread the risk and be active in different fields. So this is our growth plan for the future. This is also the things we need to do to create a stable company. You know, like I told in the beginning, you know, there's a good day, there's a bad day. And the more you grow as a company, the more stable the company and more predictable the atmosphere is, or the days are. And you can make forward planning. You know, I want to invest this year in this market, then next year I want to invest in that market. So this is how you can do product planning, people planning, application planning, but also sales planning. You know, in the beginning, it was very hard to sell. Of course, I had a network from people that I knew from my Nikon days. And in the beginning, I utilized that a lot. Now we are revising that network and improving. And also we're opening up new markets. Like we have sold in America, we have sold in China, we have sold in India, we've sold in Europe and several countries. But we have no activities yet in South America. So we are we have now one lady joining us into January 1st, and she's Spanish, and she will help us developing the South American market. But personally, I really like to become successful in Russia as well. In my Nikon days, I traveled around Russia. I learned a little bit about the Russian market. And I think it's quite interesting for us in the research market, but also in the medical field.
Thank you. So we're more or less done with the questions.
Yep.
Should we pass to the demonstration?
Yep. Hey, there is Jeroen.
Sure, I'm here. So I will first start off with a little presentation on RCM that will basically summarize most of what Peter has said. So my name is Jeroen Kole. I'm a product application specialist at Confocal.nl. Been working here since 2 years, and up to now it's been a very, very great pleasure. So in this presentation, I would like to show you how the RCM technology works, how it compares with other imaging modalities, how we can do live cell imaging with this system in a very nice way, and then configurations of an RCM system to give you an idea on how we could configure a system for you. And after that, I'll move over to a live demo of the RCM inside the NIS Elements Nikon software. Okay, so here we can see our product, which is the orange box, the RCM. And the RCM adds 3D sectioning to the microscope. It improves the resolution, and it can do this in a very cost-effective way. So saving you budget and ending up with a better result. Here we can see the principle of a regular confocal microscope. So in order to understand how the RCM works, we have to take one step back and look at how the regular confocal microscope with a PMT-based detector works. So we come in with a laser, then there is a scanning mirror, and then the laser is projected onto the sample surface by the objective lens. And then the red lines, this is the emission from your fluorescence, comes back, is descanned by the mirror, and then focused onto the pinhole. After which you will detect it with a photomultiplier tube. So what is an important aspect about photomultiplier tubes is that they're relatively insensitive. So here we can see different versions of photomultiplier tubes and their sensitivity. So we have the regular PMT, has around 20% quantum efficiency. So this means how efficient the detector converts photons into electrons. Then we have more sensitive PMT, the gas PMT. It's about 45%. But nothing beats the CCD or SCMOS camera, which has over 80% quantum efficiency. And what we can also see is that the camera is much more sensitive in the far red and near infrared regions of the spectrum. Okay, so why don't we use a camera as confocal detector? So this is the scientific invention that Peter was talking about. So Giulia De Luca replaced the PMT by a camera, and in the bottom we can see the actual the publication. And in order to get this light onto the camera chip, we use a rescanning mirror, which projects the lights onto the camera. Okay, so now we talked about how we can use a much more sensitive detection mechanism, but I also mentioned we can improve the resolution. So this is what I'm going to explain next. Here we can see rescanner and scanner schematically drawn, and you can see these scanners are moving. So in X and Y, they're both moving and they're synchronized. When we draw this schematically, we can see on the left side the laser spot scanning the sample, and on the right hand side we can see the emission spot being written on the camera chip. In this case, the scanner and the rescanner have the same amplitude. So nothing special happens. The resolution is limited by diffraction to 240 nanometers. But what we can do is we can increase the sweep on the rescanner side. And initially you can see that the emission spot is bigger because it needs to travel faster across this surface. But when we scale back the image using optics, we can see that the resolution is improved by 40%. And we can achieve 170 nanometers raw resolution. Our website, Confocal.nl/explanation, features a nice movie where you can actually see this principle coming to life. Here we can see the specifications of the RCM. So we have 170 nanometers in the raw image, and this can be further improved to 120 nanometers using deconvolution. the axial resolution, so the Z resolution, is 500 nanometers in the raw image and can be 350 after deconvolution. The quantum efficiency is depending on the camera, but anywhere between 80 and 95%. And we scan at about 1 frame per second at 512 by 512 pixels. For excitation, we use 4 lasers. So for example, 405, 488, 561, and 640. And the pinhole inside our microscope is optimized for 60 to 100x objectives. On top of that, it's very easy to use, as I will also demonstrate later on. Then this is all nice, but what can we do with it? So what does it mean for biology? Here we show an example of cells, which I imaged on several different microscopes. We can see here's the cell, and we zoom in onto this very small square. Then I took it to a wide field microscope and made this image. Then I found back the same cell on a confocal microscope with PMT as detector. And you can see that indeed contrast is improved. And then I took it to the RCM. And if you look very closely here, you can see that actually here and here, I'm able to resolve more detail. And this can be improved even further using deconvolution, which we see on the right side here. Okay, so then sensitivity is very important, as mentioned before. So here we see chromosomes, which I will also show during my demo, imaged on a regular confocal microscope with 1 area unit pinhole. And then some users know that if I close the confocal microscope pinhole, I can improve the resolution. But this is at the expense of 95% of the emission light. So you make the pinhole smaller, it improves the resolution, but you throw away a lot of emission light. The RCM, however, is not depending on the pinhole to improve the resolution. So here we can actually see the contrast is much higher in this image. And when you do deconvolution, you can see that this is becomes really significant. So I can deconvolve the 0.3 area unit image, but don't get an as sharp image as the RCM. And this is because the RCM image has a much higher signal to noise ratio. Okay, so here we see a very nice example of live cells, which we have been imaging for over 61 hours with 1 frame every 10 seconds. So we acquired over 22,000 frames here. And we can see here as well a plot of the intensity. And you can see that there is no drop in intensity. So this means there's no bleaching and the cells are happy. Sometimes you see that this intensity drops a little bit, but this is due to cells mitosing, so going into mitosis. Here you can see one. So this also indicates that the cells are happy. And we measured the laser power here at the sample plane, and we measured it to be 1 microwatt. So this is really 20 times lower than a typical confocal microscope. And therefore this keeps the cells much more happy. Then we can take this 1 step further and do deconvolution on the image. So here we see the same data set, but then on the left side we see the raw RCM data, and on the right hand side we can see the deconvolved result, bringing the resolution to 120 nanometers. Then we can do very nice multicolor imaging. So here we can see UVEX labeled for green actin. And in red we can see the mitochondria. And in the magenta color we can see the nucleus. And I want to emphasize here on the movement that you see in the actin. So this is something that you don't easily see in another microscope because this is a very sensitive structure. Here's another nice example of neurons. So these were stained for green mitochondria. In red we can see a cell outline, and in pink we can see the nucleus. And if you want to watch these movies in very high detail, then you can visit our webpage, Confocal.nl/timelapse, which features them in high resolution. Okay, we can also do very deep imaging with the RCM. Here we see a hatching mouse blastocyst image with a 25x silicon objective. So here we can see a nice structure of over 100 microns, which we can image easily completely through. And of course, we could have been going much deeper than this, but the structure wasn't bigger than 130. So if we go on, we can see here 2 different modes in which we can scan. So since we are a camera-operated system, we can also work in bypass mode, and this means you can utilize the wide field capabilities of the microscope. So to find your cells, focus, and then move on to high-resolution confocal. In terms of hardware, we are very flexible, so we can utilize different microscopes, different cameras, and different laser sources. So actually reusing existing components. Software, we have a couple of solutions. So we have NIS Elements, which I will demonstrate later. This is the Nikon software. We have a micromanager driver, which is free of charge, which can control any type of microscope, so Leica, Zeiss, Nikon, Olympus. Then we have Velocity, which also controls different microscopes and is also integrated with RCM. And then we have several image processing tools for deconvolution, and that is SVI, Huygens, and we have microvolution. So here we're going to see some examples of configurations of RCM setups. So this is on the Leica microscope. And here we can see a Zeiss microscope, which is actually a system in Johns Hopkins University in Baltimore. Here we see a Nikon TI2 microscope. So this is one of our customers in Switzerland, in Zurich. And he has the RCM on the left side, and on the right side he has a 3D adaptive optics module, which allows him to do 3D storm. And he correlates the data with the confocal unit, because the confocal is much faster than the storm imaging. And here we see an Olympus microscope, and actually this system is what we are now promoting a lot, since this is a complete package that contains the microscope, the objective lenses, the incubator for keeping the cells happy on the stage. We have a camera attached to that, and a laser source from Toptica. So this we now sell as a complete package, and this is also featured on our website. We can also fit to upright microscopes. So by raising the RCM to the level of the C-mount, we can upgrade these microscopes as well. And we talked about this a little bit earlier. We also have another product, which is RCM near infrared, NIR. And this unit uses 2 lasers in the 640 and 785 nanometer wavelengths. And using this system, we can really go much deeper into tissues. It was already mentioned that we could go over 1 millimeter, but we still don't know where the actual limit is. So maybe it's 5 or even deeper than that. And here we see an example of high resolution data captured by RCM at 20x and 100x magnification. So this brings me to the end of this presentation. So to take home is that RCM is very sensitive. It's optics only super resolution. It's in contrast to other super resolution systems very easy to use, and it's also very affordable. So you can visit our webpage or contact me by email if you have any questions. So from here, I would like to take it to the live demo. So I will start sharing my NIS Elements screen. So here we can see the NIS Elements software. And we have, as I mentioned earlier, we have two different modes. So we have the bypass mode to focus on the sample. So that I will do first. And then we move into high resolution RCM mode once the sample has been focused. And the sample that I have here are the chromosomes, which I also showed during my presentation. So here you can see these chromosomes in the wide field mode. And I just saved this image so we can have a look at it and inspect it more close up. So when I zoom in onto these chromosomes here, in the wide field, you kind of see, you can see the structure, but you don't see, you cannot really observe there are two lines here. So this structure consists of two parallel lines which interconnect. And obviously we need higher resolution to assess the actual structure of this of these chromosomes. So from here I can take it to the RCM mode. So I just focused, and then I click on RCM, and now I'm swapping the bypass knob. So I'm moving from wide field into confocal. And if I click on RCM, you can see that this panel opens up where I can choose first of all the field of view. So how big is the area that I want to scan? And we can scan 1 second 512 pixels. In 2 seconds we can scan 1000 pixels, and in 4 seconds we can scan 2000 pixels. So depending on the speed that you need, you can adjust your field of view. And then if I set my field of view, I simply set my laser power here, and I know that this already works quite well. I tested this beforehand, and whenever I'm ready, I can just simply click here, snap, and this will capture a high resolution RCM image. So, and now, if I change a little bit the lookup table, I hope you can see it, but you can see more structure in here, and especially if I record 3D volume of this specimen and then do deconvolution, we can really much better resolve the structure. So this is what I'm going to do next. I'm going to image a small Z-stack, and I won't be going into too much detail here, but what I'm doing is I'm taking a 2 micrometer volume, and you can now see how the RCM is progressing through that. So you can see actually the images stacking up, and actually you can clearly see now that there are 2 lines here. And remember that this is still raw data. So this is 170 nanometers. And we can take this 1 step further by doing deconvolution. So if this is done with the Z-stack, we can actually do that. And yeah, I hope you're able to appreciate here. We can really see there's a double-stranded structure. So now we can take this image and perform a deconvolution on it. So we can use the built-in deconvolution module by NIS Elements to deconvolve the image. The only thing that I have to do is I simply have to fill in what excitation and emission wavelength were used. And then once that is done, I can press deconvolve, and that will give me a deconvolved result in a matter of seconds. Wow, now we got a sharp image here. So we can clearly see now the structure And just to show you that this is really 120 nanometers, we can do a small line profile along such a filament. So you can see here is a plot of the actual line that I just draw here. And now I can measure what is the peak to peak distance. And this is, I hope you can see it, it's 170 nanometers. And probably there's like features here which are more close and a bit harder to resolve, which are closer together. So again, I can measure here. This one's a little bit more even. Well, this depends just a little bit on where you set the line. But I hope you get the idea. And if we go once back to the bypass image, I hope you are agreeing that here we could not resolve the structure, and with RCM high resolution, especially after deconvolution, you clearly see the contrast is much higher and the resolution is much higher. So 120 nanometers here. So this was to demonstrate like the capabilities and resolution. I also have a bit more simple sample which has 3 colors, which I will now put on the microscope. So I'm taking away the chromosomes and I'm putting the multicolor sample. So these are endothelial cells stained for DAPI in blue. We have actin in green, and we have mitochondria in red. All right, so I just put the sample, and now I can go back into bypass mode in order to focus on the sample. Okay, here we go. So this is now showing the mitochondria. And well, we can move around a little bit. So this is filled with cells. Let's go for this one here. So I'm moving now my stage to position this cell in the center. And then we can go back into the confocal mode. And again, if I'm in the confocal mode, choose the field of view, choose the laser power, and take a snap image. And my cell is here. Now in green actually, but this is just a pseudo color. Don't worry. So from here I can take it and make a multicolor image. So here it allows me to do multicolor acquisition, and I simply select the channels that I have. So in this case 561, 640 and 405. And 488, sorry. Yeah. And actually my color is set a bit funny, so I'm changing that now. So here we go. So we have blue, green, and red. And then I can hit run now, and this will generate my multicolor image. So here we can see the actin filaments, the mitochondria, and the nucleus. And it looks overexposed, but this is not the case. We can easily play with the lookup table and make it better. So this is the real, is also a benefit of using a camera. It's next to impossible to overexpose. So from here we can make the image look nicer. So we can make one channel more bright than the other. And this is what I wanted to demonstrate. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think it went out quite well. I mean, I can say I understood as much as I could, being a journalist with a background in chemistry. And yeah, you clearly can see the difference in the pictures. So if we're talking simple messages, then this definitely went through.
That's what it's supposed to do. Yeah.
Yeah. So are we done? Did we do what we planned? Yeah, looks like.
I guess so.